Hey everyone, as I hinted in my Instagram and I also confirmed at the end of my last YouTube video on the Gucci Blooms Dionysus, I did successfully score a Birkin at the Paris flagship store a few weeks ago. So there is so much to talk about that I'm actually going to upload two videos. Today's video is a comprehensive review on this bag and also a look at Hermes's brand history. Next week, the same time, I'm going to upload a video focused solely on how I got this bag. So if you're looking at something similar and visiting the flagship store in Paris, Faubourg Saint-Honoré, then I will have all my tips for you. So this bag is a 35 vol Togo Noir, which translates to the 35 baby calf Togo leather in black. As you know, I always love to keep my videos structured, so today I want to cover 5 topics. Background to the Hermes brand and this famous bag, the main design features, why is this bag so famous and so expensive? Is it worth all the hype? How do you get your hands on one? And finally, is it all worth it? So before I jump into everything, big thank you to my subscribers for always your love and your support. I hope you find today's video interesting and useful because you know that's always what I'm aiming for. So let's get started. The Birkin bag debuted in 1984 and is named after Jane Birkin, an English actress and singer based in France. The bag was co-designed by her and Hermes's chief executive when they met on a flight. Jane intrigued him because she was using a straw traveling bag where her contents kept falling out, and she also complained that she didn't like any of the leather bags currently on the market. This included Hermes's Kelly bag, which she found too structured and was also impractical for daily use. So legend has it that the design of the Birkin bag was sketched onto the airplane bath bag, and it's meant to have more of a boho look. Every year, Jane gets a royalty for use of her name, which she donates to charity. Hermes, as a French brand, is now 180 years old, which makes it the oldest luxury brand in the world. Last year, it reported a net income of 1,100 million euros, which is crazy. It started by producing high-quality horse riding harnesses and bridles for noblemen and royalty, to gaining exclusive rights in France following the invention of the zipper. Bags came about in 1922 after one of the executive's wives complained that she didn't like any of the leather bags on the market. It's interesting to note that Hermes's Kelly bag was invented about 50 years earlier than the Birkin, but it only became famous 20 years later when it was photographed on the arm of Grace Kelly, the Princess of Monaco, who was using it to hide her pregnancy. The Kelly bag, of course named after Grace Kelly, was previously called Sacre de Pêche, if I pronounced it correctly. The iconic logo of the horse carriage and the beautiful orange boxes came about in the early 1950s. You would also know Hermes for its jewelry and silk scarves, which were influenced by their equestrian culture, the riding silk. To date, more than 2,000 scarf designs have been produced, and apparently an Hermes silk scarf sells worldwide every 25 seconds. It's interesting to note that to this day, Hermes is still family owned. It's an independent company that does things the old-fashioned way with no compromise on quality. Of course, Hermes is ridiculously expensive, but it's quite refreshing in a climate where brands like Chanel and LV have ever higher prices but with lower quality. Apparently, Hermes employ more than 2,500 leather workers in about 14 ateliers across France. These are workshops, not factories. Different articles say different things, but apparently the Birkin bag can take anywhere between 16 to 48 hours to produce by hand. Birkins and Kellys are known to be made using the saddle stitch, which is a stitching technique named after the saddles which Hermes produced by hand more than a century ago. Saddle stitching cannot be replicated by a machine because it requires 2 needles to simultaneously pass through the same seam. Done correctly, it is supposed to never unravel. Each artisan has their own set of tools, like how a chef has his own set of knives, and apparently they take these tools with them when they retire. Finally, Hermes wants to infuse into its luxury brand a sense of storytelling and mystery. In a world where everything is over-marketed and everything is immediate, Hermes wants to maintain rare experiences that feel magical. So from that perspective, you can probably understand why they're happy to keep it as confusing and as difficult as possible to get a Birkin or a Kelly, but we'll discuss this further in the next section. The Birkin comes in sizes. What you will commonly see is sizes 25 to 40, which refers to the width of the bag in centimeters at the base. So apologies to Americans watching. Less common are the larger sizes, which are intended for traveling and not everyday use. Everyone knows the Birkin, but did you know there's a variation called the HAC, which is considered the original? Translating to high belts, it originated in the late 19th century as a travel bag for carrying riding equipment. The HAC has a taller body and shorter handles, so it's only suitable to be handheld and you can't hold it on your arm. Another variation to the Birkin is the JPG shoulder Birkin, which has longer handles so it can sit comfortably off your shoulder, and it has a significantly shorter body so it can fit under your arm. Today, there have been two models, the shoulder Birkin and the shoulder Birkin 2, the newer one. The newer model includes changes like interior pockets, a more slender body, and also the standard Birkin circular turn lock instead of the old shoulder Birkin square lock. In choosing your bag size, keep in mind your height. I am 1.6 meters, which is 5 feet and 3 inches, so I felt that the second smallest Birkin, the Birkin 30, was the perfect size for me. This is the next size up, the Birkin 35. I can still make it work, but it's starting to look a little bit big on me. I'll explain this in my next video, which is my Paris purchase story, but I did not request this size. If you're tall, the Birkin 35 will be the perfect size for you. But then again, since mini bags are totally in right now, as you can see with Kendall Jenner, you can go in the complete opposite direction and opt for a tiny bag because it's super cute and super playful. Other factors to keep in mind regarding size is price and weight. The larger the bag is, the more expensive it is, and also the heavier it becomes. Hermes gives you a dozen leather options, which can affect the bag's weight, but ultimately it's not designed to be a light bag. The Birkin is lined twice in leather on the inside and outside. I personally don't like to carry this bag for a whole day, it's just too cumbersome. And Jane Birkin has been quoted as saying the bag is bloody heavy and it contributed to her need for operation on her inflamed shoulder. Keep in mind that unlike the Kelly, there's no shoulder strap, so you have to be comfortable always holding the Birkin in your hand or hanging it off your arm. Those who watch my videos know that that's not me, but because I was not offered a Kelly in Paris, I just brought home the Birkin. Personally, I would not recommend the Birkin 40 or larger unless you're going to use it as a dedicated travel bag or you're going to get driven around a lot, so you won't be doing much walking. It does become a very substantial weight. Some of my friends find the Birkin ugly, but I actually find it interesting that unlike other designer bags on the market, there's 3 different ways of wearing it. Fully done up and enclosed, partially enclosed, or just left open. Fully done up, so with the top flap over the buckle loops, there's an extra decorative element which makes the bag look more sporty and slightly casual. I guess this is the boho look that Jane Birkin wanted. My favorite is the partially enclosed, where the top flap is tucked inside the bag, so the bag shape is simplified. You get this really strong horizontal line, which reinforces the lines of the draw straps, and you also get the added bonus of showing the Hermes Made in France stamping. This look to me is more formal and stiff or prim, which I prefer. Finally, you can just leave everything open, which really emphasizes the draw straps as accessories to the bag, as they sort of wriggle about and the shiny hardware catches the light. This sort of makes the bag look effortless. More often than not, I end up leaving this bag open, not because it's my favorite look, but just because you always need 2 hands to be able to do this up. and you don't always have that time every time you take a phone out, every time you take a train pass out. Plus you don't want your friends to always be waiting around for you. So as awesome as this extra accessorizing looks, it does take extra time, extra effort to style. The Hermes lock is such an iconic accessory, but again there's that dilemma between looking good versus being too fiddly. I love the look of the lock in the center of the bag, but usually what I end up doing is putting it on the end of my clochette, because if I put my drawstrings in place, I have to grab the key every time I want to open it, and it's just too much hassle. There are unlimited ways to dress up your Birkin using twilly scarves or keychains or charms. Here, since my Birkin is a little bit large and quite dark, I've decided to add a pop of colour through this playful oversized clochette, which also doubles as a mirror. This colour is orange poppy and the leather is Vol Swift, so it adds a really interesting texture and colour contrast to my bag. Like size, leather is a very important decision because it directly affects price. Birkin bags start at 10k for their most basic leathers and can go as high as 150k for exotic options such as alligator, crocodile and ostrich. Among all luxury brands, Hermes is famous for providing you the most high quality luxurious leathers. No matter what type of leather you pick, they tend to fall under three main categories. Taurion, which translates to baby bull, Veau, which is baby cow, and finally Vache, which is adult cow or adult bull. So for example, here I have the Veau Togo and the Veau Swift. Apparently with Veau, since it comes from a smaller animal and therefore it's naturally a smaller piece, it's only suitable for use on accessories such as an everyday bag compared to your large travel bags or large upholstery. As mentioned before, Hermes has dozens and dozens of leather options, so today let's just touch base on the most common leathers that you should know whether you want to buy new or pre-loved. Togo, Clermont, Epsom, Swift and Boxcar. My Birkin is made of Veau Togo. Togo is considered the most popular option that is scratch resistant, has a visible grain but is smooth and soft to touch. The leather is so supple that it even feels a little bit spongy. You can feel it expand and contract underneath your fingertips. At a distance, Togo is known to reflect light, so this brings the leather to life. Togo is known to be lighter than Clermont and is supposed to hold its shape quite well, which is good for retaining the value of the bag over time. Veau Taurion Clermont's leather was used from the 1980s and has a similar look to Togo, except with wider and flatter grains that has a more matte appearance. Released in 2006, Veau Swift, which you can see in my clochette, has very fine micrograins and is super soft. It's even more buttery than my Togo. Since the surface is almost entirely flat, scratches can be more noticeable, but it can be rubbed away with your fingers. Swift is known to be great at absorbing dyes, which brings brighter colors to life. Released in 2003, Epsom has a slightly laminated look and gives your Birkin a very structured, rigid appearance, as it is known for holding its shape very well. It's known to be lightweight, easy to clean and more durable in the rain, so it's appealing for those of you who worry about safeguarding a 10k bag against factors outside your control like the weather or spillage. Boxcar is one of the oldest leathers that Hermes has been using, so you'll often see it in vintage Kellys or belts. It's rigid, so great for retaining shape, but also smooth and shiny, and known to develop a glossy, mirror-like patina over time. It cannot tolerate any water and will also reveal scratches more easily, but it's known to be able to be restored in the Hermes spa no matter the condition, so it can serve generations. Hermes are known to have the most sophisticated tanners of all luxury brands, so they can achieve every color of the rainbow. As an example, there are over 20 shades of blue alone. Apparently at auctions, shades of pink and blue, especially in smaller bag models such as the Kelly 25, command the highest prices. The most popular requested colors tend to be black, gold, Note gold is the term for Hermes's signature camel tone, orange H, blue sapphire, etoupe etan. My dream is to one day obtain a gold Kelly, so maybe in 10 years or so you'll see me do a YouTube video on it. As I mentioned earlier, the Birkin interior is also leather, and this is typically sheer, a type of goat skin that is lightweight. It's scratch resistant, has a grain and sheen, and generally the color will match the exterior unless you have requested a customized bag. Since rain is one of your worst enemies, your purchase of the Birkin will include complimentary rain covers. Each packet contains 2, and you can see it covers your entire bag except for the handles. Standard hardware is hand-polished brass coated in either 18 karat gold or palladium, which has a silver-white look. The hardware finish will be the same across the drawer straps, center turn lock, locks, keys, and feet. Note the number on the bottom of the lock will always match the number on the keys. The engraving on the drawer strap is super fine, so much so that I really struggled to capture it on camera. Hermes is also engraved onto both sides of the zipper, which again was near impossible for me to photograph. Every luxury bag comes with a dust bag, but I enjoy Hermes's little touch of a second mini dust bag just for the lock and keys. When you purchase the bag brand new, all of the hardware will be coated in a protective plastic wrap. I have only left that on my feet, which hopefully you can see in this photo. The bag will also have a protective felt lining which covers the top flap and prevents markings on the leather from the drawer straps. So I apologize that I was so excited about this bag. I couldn't resist opening and removing some of this packaging, so you unfortunately can't see it in the original state. This is why I don't do unboxing videos, because I have to unbox it first myself. In an interview, Chief Executive Hermes stated that in 2007, when gold prices were quite high, they considered reducing the amount of gold they were using in their hardware because they far exceeded the amount that other luxury bag makers were using. However, when a senior craftsman advised that 5 to 8 years, the patina of that hardware would not look the same as that of older bags where the gold was not compromised, Hermes decided against this decision because it's that important to them to uphold their reputation for uncompromised quality. After the leather is cut, each artisan is responsible for their own bag, which they see through to the end. Traditionally, the system was that the end of the drawer strap would be stamped with a code which represented the workshop, the year it was made, and also the craftsman who made the bag, so that if the bag was ever returned for repairs, it would go back to the person who handled it. On my bag, and this is the case with a lot of the new ones, it has no stamping, so I'm not sure what happens if I send it back to Paris. Everything I've mentioned up until now regarding leather and hardware options is just scraping the surface of what's possible. Since the Birkin is handmade and time is spent on each order, customization is possible as long as you're given that opportunity because you're considered one of their VIP customers. Plus, you have to be able to afford the price tag and the weight. Every store has a quota for how many special orders they can take. And if you're that VIP customer, then you can request things like contrasting interior lining, bicolor or tricolor exterior leather, 24 karat gold plating, or diamond encrusted hardware, or even contrast stitching instead of camouflage stitching, which really showcases the skill of the artisan's craft and emphasizes the lines of the bag. Special orders are always identified by a horseshoe stamp. So if you see a Birkin with an unusual trait with the stamp, it means it's custom and one of a kind. Without the stamp, you're looking at a fake. The Hermes Birkin holds the reputation for the world's most expensive bag, and it's also an elusive icon of wealth and celebrities because it's largely unattainable by an average person. In my video next week, where I document my Paris purchase story, you'll see the lengths that I had to go to. So finally, on my 4th day, I was able to buy this bag. There was a lot involved to get my hands on it. Its reputation and price can be attributed to 6 main factors. First is quality. Hermes is notorious for the quality of its natural materials, its sophisticated tanning process, its highly skilled artisans, and the intense quality control they have over the entire procedure. Stitches will be tight, leather will be blemish free, and hardware will be free of tarnishing. If you are ever to have issues because of natural wear and tear, then Hermes Bag Spa will fix it. Hermes incorporates expertise from around the world. So with small leather goods like bags, they're all hand stitched in France. Silk is from Lyon, cashmere is from Mongolia, watchmaking from Switzerland, lacquer from Vietnam, wool from Scotland. Limited stock. Apparently only 3 to 4 bags are produced a week. It takes at least 2 years for a craftsman to be trained and supervised under a senior before they're allowed to even touch the bags. It's these factors which result in slow production and limited stock, so that the supply is always far below market demand, which ensures the bag is rare and forever sought after. Customization. Mid-2016, a Himalayan crocodile Birkin with white gold hardware encrusted with 245 diamonds was bought for $300,000 US. For someone who has it all, Hermes's customization opens the door for anything money can buy and the mind can dream of. I did a little bit of background research, and I believe that ridiculously expensive Birkin was bought by Singaporean Jamie Chua, who owns at least 200 Birkins and Kellys, but that's a whole other story. High price. The cheapest that you can find the Birkin is just over 10k, and this is if you go to the country of origin. Birkins can easily sell at 2 to 3 times that price at auction, which is something even Hermes knows. But fortunately, they don't raise their prices further because of integrity. Finally, no access. Even if you can afford the price tag, you can't just walk into a store and buy a Birkin. Even if you put 50k in cash on the counter, that doesn't mean they're going to offer you the bag. So this brings us to the next very important section. How do you actually get your hands on one? Getting your hands on a Birkin is extremely confusing and shrouded in mystery. So today I'm going to try and do my best on this topic. Of course, I don't have all the answers, so I look forward to your contributions in the comments below. To clarify, this convoluted procedure is only if you want to buy their most coveted handbags. If you're looking instead at their jewelry, their silk, perfumes, shoes, it's generally possible for you to just walk into the store and successfully buy it on the spot. To my knowledge, there are 4 ways of trying to get a Birkin. Waiting list, walk-in, relationship, and pre-loved market. I've spoken to Hermes sales associates and also the staff back in the corporate office, and it seems that worldwide there is no standardized procedure or even a log of what each store's individual policy is. In an interview, Chief Executive Hermes stated that several years back, the family agreed to just let each store manager manage demand on their own in their preferred method. This means that there is no certainty as to when stock arrives from Paris, which days, how many, what models. There can be a waiting list if the store manager chooses to open it, or there won't be one if the store manager chooses not to. And if there is a waiting list, then when it's open and how long it's open for is completely up to the store manager and will fluctuate. So there are stories that in some instances, so many orders have come through that the waiting list ends up being closed for many years, say 6 years. Finally, walk-in, which is that miracle when you just simply walk into the store and ask for a Birkin. This is possible if you end up being in the store at a time and on a day where there's actually stock, and you've passed their visual assessment where they believe that you are worthy of buying a bag. Notice that when I say walk-in, it means walking in and securing an appointment with a sales associate in the bag department, because any Birkins or any Kellys you see on the shelf is purely for display. So you need to have personal time with a staff member who can go into the back and check if they have any in stock. In my opinion, out of all the different methods available, your best option is to walk in Paris, because they have better access to the stock, and also it's the cheapest price worldwide plus tax back. It's cheaper than America, UK, Australia, and typically you're looking at about a 30% saving. I've sent emails to the Hermes store in Lyon and Bordeaux to see how their system works, but to my knowledge, I believe the method they have at the Paris flagship store is unique and it's not replicated anywhere else. So whichever city you end up picking, book yourself 4 to 5 days. Spend day one popping into the store and asking them how the procedure works, and then spend every subsequent day trying to secure yourself an appointment in the bag department. What I'm not sure about, and this is where I'm open to your feedback, is whether Hermes Birkin pricing is standardized across all the EU countries. So compared to what it is in France, is it the same in Italy, Germany, Spain? If that's the case, then look into each country's individual tax return rate and do the same thing. Book yourself a 4 to 5 day holiday, spend day one popping in, and spend every other day giving it a shot. Your next best option, if you have time on your hands and you want to save money, is the waiting list. Not all stores will offer this, so you just need to call up your local store and see. For example, in Sydney, it's available, but they advise me to just call up again every month to see when it's open, because that they won't tell me. Once you are on the waiting list, you give them your preferred size, color, leather, and hardware, and they will call you when something similar arrives from Paris. So you might request the classic gold Birkin with gold hardware in size 35, and instead you're offered a taupe or the same specifications but a size smaller. This is because the stores have limited control over what they end up receiving from the French workshops. Once you head into the store and inspect the bag, you can then choose to accept it or reject it and continue to wait. I was told that if you opt for the classic colors, then the wait could be up to 3 years. While if you opt for a bright seasonal color, it might just be 1 year. From what people have mentioned online, don't be too picky. If you end up rejecting the bag too many times, you'll be blacklisted. I think generally the attitude from Hermes is that you should feel quite grateful to be offered a bag, so be flexible. Earlier, I mentioned with walk-ins that there needed to be stock in the store and for you to pass the staff's visual assessment. But what happens if there is stock which they don't offer to you, they offer it to somebody else? This is what I call the relationship method of obtaining a Birkin, and I believe this used to be the old system that was in place for a long time. So traditionally, you would only have a chance of being offered the Birkin or Kelly if you had formed a strong personal relationship with one of the sales associates. Usually you achieve this by a decade of buying Hermes accessories and other small things, so you make yourself memorable and you show loyalty to the brand. This is still the advice that many Hermes veterans give to newcomers, where they recommend you need to buy something small first before you even dream of getting the Birkin. So when stock finally arrives from Paris, your sales associate would think of you and they would offer you the chance to view the bag. Under this old system, walk-ins like me with no previous association with Hermes would have never stood a chance. Finally, we have the preloved market, which varies from your huge auction houses like Christie's through to your local consignment store. The advantage here is that you have basically every Birkin and Kelly on offer, so you don't have to compromise on what you want. But the disadvantage is that you are paying a premium price to own the bag immediately, and also to own the bag you really want. It's also interesting that a pre-loved bag, which shows wear and tear, ends up being 2 to 3 times more expensive than a new bag. But I guess that really just proves how the demand far outnumbers the stock. If it makes you feel any better about the overly convoluted and confusing process, apparently Hermes does not give out any freebies, whether you're a celebrity or you're a social media influencer. So everyone has to work hard to get their hands on the Birkin or the Kelly. It's been reported that celebrities therefore go to third parties who deal with all of this Birkin mystery because they don't get any special treatment in store or even their ability to get an appointment. Is the Birkin worth all the hype and the price tag? Ultimately, the Hermes Birkin holds the status of the handbag holy grail. There is no luxury bag brand bigger than Hermes, and there is no bag that is more expensive, more rare, more difficult to attain than the Birkin or Kelly. So getting your hands on one can make you feel like you've conquered the luxury market. Of course, there's the recognition and the status, and I personally only really experienced this when I used my Birkin to fight with my wedding venue regarding compensation for a major stuff up on my wedding day. So having the Birkin with me really signaled to the staff that I had high expectations and I was not going to settle for anything menial. So if you ever need to be intimidating in life, the Birkin can help you do that. If you love bright colors or a fully customizable bag where you pick the leather, hardware, size, color, then the flexibility of the Hermes Birkin will be quite satisfying and give you the sense of a unique identity. Although if you want to buy this bag brand new, then be ready to compromise because it's all dependent on what stock they have available in that moment. Another factor for me which really shows the extent of Hermes's quality compared to other luxury brands is in their packaging. Let me know if this is not the case for you, but my Hermes Birkin is the only time where they've put in quite an amount of extra padding to ensure that my bag will not rock around inside the box. This is something I really appreciate, especially since I bought the bag overseas, so it did have to go through about 24 hours of transit to finally reach my home. So compared to my Chanel, my LV, my Gucci, where my bag is in the dust bag but it just sort of rocks back and forth inside the box, I really appreciated this extra touch which ensured minimal damage. Of course it's early days, but I've scrutinized every part of this bag and I can't fault the quality. It is legendary. You can't find a single stitch that's out of place. The leather is so gorgeous. You know how Chanel fans make a big deal out of lambskin and how supple it is? I feel like Togo is very much on the same level. It's different, but it's equally luxurious. If you like the thought of buying and using a bag whose value does not depreciate and actually increases, the Birkin is a solid investment piece. This is especially if you manage to buy it in France, which is the cheapest price listed worldwide plus tax return. There is such limited stock and so much demand forever that you are guaranteed to make a profit. However, it is important to note that even though this bag is worth 2 to 3 times more compared to what you paid for, it can take you 5 years to find someone to sell it to. And that's because less than 1% of the population look at Birkins. Plus, there's so many varieties available, you have to wait for someone who wants exactly your bag. Don't look at buying a Birkin unless you're in a stable financial position where you're going to be comfortable with that amount of money being locked away for several years. If you expect to get your money's worth out of using the bag, that's not going to happen, especially if you live in Australia where luxury lifestyle is just not intrinsic to our culture. So when I was in London last year and when I was in Geneva a few weeks ago, I saw Birkins and Kellys a lot more often. But back in Sydney, I think I've seen them once or twice a year on other people. So for me personally, I only use this bag for anniversary dinners and for weddings, which equates to about 3 times a year. Otherwise, it's too expensive and too risky to take out. Plus, I don't really like It's a bag you have to baby, so you always have to dedicate part of your brain to just thinking about your bag, and that can get quite exhausting. Many of you know that I'm also a shoulder bag type of girl, so the fact that the Birkin relies on being handheld or held on my arm just really isn't me. If you're someone who doesn't travel light, the Birkin will not disappoint. It's a very spacious bag. Unlike the Chanel double flap, the top flap here doesn't take away from the amount of space that you have for storage. Just if you do put a lot in it, be prepared to have a real workout. For me personally, I actually love the look of the Kelly because it's so prim and proper. In comparison, I find the Birkin more casual and quite decorative. These decorative elements are unfortunately a bit fiddly, so if you're like me and you just want to use this bag, you won't really appreciate these decorative elements because every time you want to open it and close it, it just feels like it's in the way. Black leather with gold hardware is one of the most classic looks, but I have to admit this color was not in my top 10 color preferences, and that's purely because I already own 3 Chanels of this combination, so I really wanted a new look. It does go with anything, but I have to admit I don't think it's my perfect bag because the 35 can be a bit overwhelming on my frame, and that's more of the scenario because it's a big black bag. I don't want to complain because I am super duper grateful that I got offered a Birkin, if not one of the most classic Birkins, but I am hoping in the future this bag will grow on me more and be more suitable for my lifestyle. You know, maybe when I'm a mom and I'm carrying 1,000 things, because this bag has that capacity and it's now my largest bag. Online, there have been reports of Birkins developing bat wings if their drawer straps are left open too long. This is even with leathers like Togo and Clemence, which have been reported as more rigid. So to really maximize the value of your bag by keeping it in its best form and safeguarding it against creases, always stuff it. This is the stuffing I received from Hermes when I purchased the bag, so it's the perfect size. Another tip to keep in mind to safeguard the value of the Birkin is wrapping a twilly around the handles so that dirt, oil or cream from your hands don't transfer to the leather over time. Before I realized that practical reason, I wasn't a fan of the twilly aesthetic, but now I'm totally all for it. I just have to save up first. Finally, my last comment is that all repairs, all servicing, all bag spas for the Birkin are done in Paris. So if you want a bag that's not out of action for long, for example, if you use it for work, then you might be a bit disappointed because every trip to Paris can take at least 6 months. But then again, who uses a Birkin for work? So everyone, that's all from me today. Another long and jam-packed video just the way I like it, and I hope it also suits you as well. My spending account is obviously back down to 0, but hopefully one day I will be sitting here talking to you about my dream Kelly. So see you again next week this time to talk about my experience nabbing the Birkin at the Paris flagship store. Take care, see you again.